It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
The Shepherd of the Knucklehead celebrates two of man's greatest pursuits, craft beer and a hot meal.
When it comes to craft beer, they're all in. An incredible lineup of beers on tap, fed by rows of kegs in the basement. And they double down with a menu of apps, soups, seafood, and butchered on-site steaks. Everything scratch-made, local ingredients whenever possible.
Great place, great food, unbelievable beer selection, friendly staff, can't go wrong.
Craft beer, cocktails, food, classic and creative. Something for everyone. The Shepherd and the Knucklehead.
All right, welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Three Amigos Tri-State Sports Talk Show. Thank you to Richard Quinn and Modern Metro, Rockland World Radio.
Rockland World Radio.
We're here live again from the Shepherd and the Knucklehead. It's burger night, as you can see. It's $6.95 burgers. They got the best beer selection probably in New Jersey, 90 craft beers. So I can't really find that anywhere.
Yeah, we're each, enjoying one of their great craft beers,
Yeah.
Mine's from my hometown of one of the only places where I can get one of the best craft beers from my hometown of Ithaca, New York.
Yeah. Kevin's from Ithaca, New York. Yeah, and I got this Goose Island Bourbon County Stout. Yeah. So, check out Wednesdays. That's one of my favorite days of the week here. 50-cent wings. $9 unlimited wings, so you can make a whole meal out of wings. And they also have $5 wines as well, house wines. Karaoke every other Friday. That's another big thing they got going on here. That makes it exciting. So, but anyway, off to we have a lot of topics that happened this past week. We have proposed football rules. We got the NHL trade deadline. We have NBA, NHL in full swing. We have the NFL as well, National Football League. Yeah, and we have the draft coming up eventually in football. We got college basketball. So we got a lot, that's we're in the middle of, and we have an exciting week ahead of us.
Yeah, now I guess I'll start by last week. We talked about new playoff rule proposals for baseball. Now this week there are new playoff rule proposals for the NFL as well. Their talk is to expand the playoffs from 6 teams per conference to 7 teams per conference. There'll now be 3 wild card under the new playoff format they're talking about. There'll be 3 wild card teams as opposed to just 2. And the way under the new playoff format they're talking about, there'd only be 1 first round bye. Only the top seed would get a first round bye in each conference, and then it would be. The rest would be just how it always is. The 7 seed, only there'd be a third wild card game between the 7 seed and the 2 seed, and there'd be like the 6 seed and the 3 seed matchup on wild card weekend, and the 5 seed and 4 seed matchup. But then there'd also be a 7 seed and 2 seed matchup. So, what do you guys think of this new?
I think it's a great thing because it gives another team a chance, and I think it makes it more interesting because any team could go up against anyone, and I like that it gives someone a chance to have home field advantage in the playoffs, like maybe a second team from a division rather than just that one team from the division. So I think it'll be more interesting.
Yeah, that is true. Although it wouldn't really address one of the biggest complaints about the NFL playoffs is I think the division winner that has a worse record than a wild card winner would be still considered a higher seed, than the wild card winner. So therefore you'll still have the problem of like a division winner with a worse record of hosting a wild card team with a better record, and that has been a complaint among a lot of people with the playoffs. And this what they're talking about doesn't address that issue.
That's one of the things I don't like about it.
And I don't like it because it's not right for a better record to be the lower seed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the article that you were referencing before, Kevin, that we were reading, made some legitimate points also.
Yeah, I personally do like the idea of expanding the playoffs to 7 teams, and that's largely I think I will admit to being a little biased as a Jets fan, because I feel like their best shot to make the playoffs is to finish 9-7 and hope it's good enough, and the odds of 9-7 being good enough is obviously a lot better if they have 3 wild card teams as opposed to just 2, and but so therefore I like it as a Jets fan, but I can understand some of the arguments that people were making who really didn't like it, who really didn't like it that much, because they're making the argument that they think you would also see a lot of times like an 8-8 or maybe even 7-9 teams getting in under this format, and they're not really nuts about that. I think, which I can kind of understand, but I think more often than not you'd be seeing the worst team to get in would be 9-7, and I obviously like that as a Jets fan, but that's my bias, because I'm a Jets fan. I feel like the only way they're going to have a chance to make the playoffs is going 9-7,
and hoping it's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we see it even now. Sometimes you get a 7-9 team that wins a division in a weak division, or pulls off a wild card, or like a 7-9 or 8-8 team that does that. Occasionally, it will happen more. So I do think that's a legitimate concern, because.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's been very rare. I think I've only seen it happen one time that a team go 7-9 and make the playoffs.
That was Seattle.
Right, the 2010.
And they won the division.
Yeah, the 2010 Seahawks went 7-9 and won the division. That's the only time I've seen a 7-9 team make the playoffs.
Sure, but I've seen a number of 8-8 teams. To actually make it more common for 8-8 team to make the playoffs. I mean,
still pretty rare though.
It still might be pretty rare. But yeah, it does make it kind of. I do understand the argument. Like, I don't know. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I generally like that you could have. It kind of eliminates the possibility of like a 10-6 team like not making the playoffs, like we've seen with, say, the 2015 Jets or the Giants in 2010. It kind of eliminates that possibility, but it does. So there is that. That is a positive, for sure. But of course, it does let in some of the teams that really aren't that great. But I could understand that as well. That occasionally, in such a short season, you do have some teams that aren't that struggle through the regular season, but are just good enough and might get hot and healthy for the playoffs and really be one of the better teams.
Yeah, like one of those example of those teams might be the 2011 Giants that went 9 and finished 9 and that kind of had an up and down regular season and finished 9-7.
Yeah, and if they didn't lose that game to the Eagles, they would have probably been in the playoffs.
Right, you're talking about, John, the 2010 team that went 10-6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the 2011 team managed to get in with a 9-7 record, then the 2010 team just missed the playoffs with a 10-6 record.
I mean, the shocking thing was, that 30-7 lead with 7 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way it is. That's the way sports is, and that's really. There's a lot of teams that will, kind of can say, yeah, if the ball bounced a different way, we would have been a lot better. So that is true. That is the way sports is.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, this is and I'll admit to being biased as a Jets fan, and I don't think everyone who's a Jets or Mets fan is biased in this new playoff rule proposal, because the MLB new playoff rule proposals of expanding it to 7 teams also benefits the Mets, because the Mets are more likely to finish right on the bubble as far as being good enough for the playoffs. But if they expanded it to 7 teams, they would have a good chance of making the playoffs.
Right. Well, I mean, and it's different sports. I mean, in baseball, I'm kind of against it, because I think that the team with the best record usually is the best team over 162 games. So they usually are the better teams. So, we're in football with injuries and other extraneous factors that happen. It's kind of questionable as to who really is the better teams.
Yeah, so, in a much shorter season. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So 16 games isn't necessarily, I don't think, representative of really how good a team necessarily is over,
right, especially the teams, that maybe are middle of the road, like 9 and 7.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So,
I think for all intents and purposes, you can say in football, the teams that go like 2-14, 3-13, they're genuinely bad teams, I think, and teams that go 14-2, 13-3 are genuinely good teams, and then teams that maybe are in the middle of the pack, like say 8-8, say finish between 8-8 and 10-6, were kind of may not have been as good or bad as their record indicates.
7-9 to 10-6, 7-9 to 9-7 for sure, maybe even 10-6, sure.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of 10-6 teams might not be as good as their record indicates, and a lot of 7-9 teams might not be as bad as their record indicates. So I think I'll say 7-9 to 10-6.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I understand that. And to some degree, with that argument, I mean, I almost would be okay with letting some of those 7-9 teams in, potentially, but. Yeah, I got mixed feelings about it. I really do. I mean, for one thing, the playoffs are also long enough already. So to put in more games.
Right, is why you're talking about now having 3 games under this format. We'd have now 6 games on Wild Card Weekend instead of 4. It's like before we had 4 games on Wild Card Weekend. Now we'd have 6 games on Wild Card Weekend.
Why don't they just play all year long, right?
Yeah. What do you mean play all year long?
And not have an off season, just keep playing.
Yeah, in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm joking. I'm being facetious, of course.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is. I mean, that they keep expanding it longer and longer and longer. And I mean, it used to be in January that it ends. Now it's in February, and they got training camp in July, June, May. They have pads off in May. Training. So
the reason why the Super Bowl's in February now, though, is because they moved the start of the season up from the season used to start on Labor Day weekend. Then they moved it up to the weekend after Labor Day weekend.
Do you think that happened after 9/11 that they did that, or they just decided to do that?
I think I think they did it. They did it once before 9/11 in '99. I remember it was the first time they did it. But then in 2000 they moved it back to Labor Day weekend. But then in 2001 they moved it back. So no, I don't think 9/11 had anything to do with it, because in 2001, week before 9/11 was just right. The first week of 2001 was right before 9/11 happened, and they moved, and that was the week after Labor Day weekend, and the reason they did it was, I think just because of TV ratings and audiences. Like on Labor Day weekend, people are going to their Labor Day picnics and barbecues, so they weren't getting as good ratings for week 1 ratings, when they had week 1 on Labor Day weekend. So that's why they did it the way they do it now and moved the season to start the week after Labor Day weekend.
I wonder if that would be true now, with a lot of people having like outdoor living rooms and stuff with the couches and the back and the TVs outside.
I heard something that they were talking about doing Friday night football as a possibility. Would you ever think that would work someday?
Well, I think that would be an interesting experiment because it would be like, would that get as good a ratings as like Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football does? You know, an advantage to it would be Friday nights. It's easier for people to like stay up and watch the games when they don't have to. On people on the East Coast who, when the games end late, you know, it's easier for them to stay up and watch the whole game when they don't have to work early the next day. That's one advantage to having a Friday night game, but a disadvantage would be people are more likely to be maybe on a Friday night out going out into happy hour, going out, you know, clubbing or stuff like that they might be losing some of their audience to people who'd rather go out and have a good time on Friday night.
Sure, yeah. Well, it also depends sometimes on the magnitude of the game. I think I remember there were times at the bars in Cortland and stuff where everything, you know, if there was a big game on, instead of you know, trying to get with the girls and stuff, all the guys would be kind of focused on the TV, watching the game. So, it depends, I guess. So, it depends on the magnitude of the game. For regular season games, I'm not so sure that would be the biggest draw. In the playoffs, that's when, you know, you get more people focused on it.
And are they, John, do you know if they're talking about maybe replacing Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football with Friday Night Football? Are they talking about replacing one of those?
I don't think really maybe replacing any, but I think they were kind of thinking maybe to balance it a little bit.
Like, you mean switch off, like maybe instead of a Monday night game having a Friday night game, or instead of a Thursday night game having a Friday night?
Maybe.
Well, I think a Friday night game might make more sense than a Thursday night game because that would give, at least as it is, Thursday Night Football draws a lot of controversy because of the players playing on much shorter rest, you know. Friday Night Football would at least give them that one extra day of rest, you know.
Yeah.
So if there's anything I would think it would make sense replacing, it would be Thursday, doing Friday Night Football instead of Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
I could see that for sure. But you know, it's definitely is kind of makes a difference kind of when the game is, as far as viewer attendance, that type of thing. So.
Tough to say, which it would be an interesting experiment, because I could see ways in which having a Friday night game would help their ratings, and I could see ways in which it would hurt their ratings too, so, you know, it would be an interesting experiment.
Right.
To see which it did more, because like I said, Friday night more people would stay up and probably watch the whole game, but fewer people might be watching the game to begin with, because they might be going out and doing their other Friday night, you know, things, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. True. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, this is definitely very interesting. The kind of way that it's expanded, really, though, according to the amount of teams that there are. That's probably part of the reason that they've expanded it. I mean, all the games used to be on Sunday at one time, and then they made Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football. Well, Monday Night Football first, and then Thursday Night Football.
Do you remember when they made Thursday and Monday Night Football?
Thursday Night Football was much more recent.
Yeah, I think that was. I don't know the exact year it started. I think the year when they started having a game every Thursday night was the year in which they started having a game every Thursday night is pretty recent. I think it was within this decade. I'm not sure. 2008,
because I remember that was the Jets' first Thursday night game when they beat New England.
I think it was. I think they had Thursday night games in 2008, but not every week. It was more like they were experimenting with it then.
Right.
And so they would have like a game here and there on Thursday night, and they did that throughout the years I've watched football. I think they would often experiment with it and do it here and there, but having a game on a weekly basis on a Thursday night, I think, was only within the last decade. So I don't think by 2008, I don't think they were doing Thursday night football every week by then. I think it was kind of more here and there. They would have a game on Thursday night.
I've kind of found Thursday night games to to be kind of interesting a couple days after, because a team has a chance to go on a little winning streak, getting 2 wins in a row, depending on the condition that the team is in, whoever's playing.
Yeah.
Well, it's also probably, it was at first, could have been misleading to some degree. I mean, it seems like a lot of them that they've had, whether Thursday night or Monday night, Sunday night, are marquee matchups. They try to make it marquee matchups. But when it was once in a while, they probably got very good ratings on Thursday nights, and that's probably part of the reason they tried to make it every Thursday night.
Now,
but that might not hold up over time.
now,
Right,
do you think it's unfair for Thanksgiving that they always have the Cowboys and the Lions playing, even though that started as a tradition?
It's a tradition. Yeah, I mean, you know, the controversy is over the rest, the amount of rest that the teams get. So, you know,
Right.
I mean, people who look out for player safety probably say that, you know, you need at least pretty much a full week of rest. And you know, we thought, well, I think that they thought once in a while having a Thursday night game would be good, and they made it marquee matchups. I mean, I haven't seen every Thursday night game, but from what I've seen is that some of the games aren't good. It's kind of a blowout because one of the teams if a team has shorter rest, that does affect the result.
Or the game. A lot of the games might sometimes be close games, but a close game doesn't always mean a good game if the play is ugly. If the play is ugly, you know, which is what you see a lot. People say you see a lot of with Thursday night games, you know. But I would say I get the idea that probably they're getting good enough ratings from it that I don't think it's really going to go away, you know, anytime soon, Thursday night football.
Do you see them maybe moving any football team to a different city, or each team staying where they are?
I haven't heard any rumors about, other than maybe them wanting to expand internationally, like we were talking about last week, and maybe get a team in Mexico City or London. But other than that, I haven't really heard of any other rumors of teams moving.
Yeah. I think with 4 teams in a division, it's fair and square for the most part.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you guys out. We've talked a lot about the latest in football. Probably a good idea to talk a little bit about with the NHL trade deadline today. What's the latest on that?
Well,
and the Rangers are on a roll, you know.
They are, yeah. John's been following that most.
There's good news about them, and there's not so good news. The good news is the Rangers have signed Chris Kreider to a 7-year extension, and the not-so-good news is their goalie, Igor Shesterkin, and another player, I'm trying to think, they were just recently in a car accident, and the Rangers goalie got an upper body injury who is day-to-day now, and that's a little bit concerning because right now the Rangers are 4 points out of a playoff spot. So yeah, you don't want, I mean, this is not a good time to have injuries when you're that close to getting to the playoffs.
Yeah, when you're competing for a playoff spot. No, it's not good. Yeah. But,
and for the Devils, they made some minor moves. They traded Wayne Simmons, who happens to be a free agent, to the Buffalo Sabres for a 5th-round draft pick, and the Devils also traded their backup goalie, Louis Domingue, to the Vancouver Canucks for another backup goalie by the name of McIntyre. So hopefully we'll see where that is. But I mean, it makes sense right now for teams to trade good players who are going to be free agents and build for the future, especially if you're not going to make the playoffs, so that way you don't lose them for nothing. And that's why they come up with new contracts and new deals to convince the players to stay with that particular team. And was also another interesting moment in hockey. The Carolina Hurricanes had a game in which two of their goalies left with injury, so they had to make a decision in which to call on the Zamboni driver to suit up as the goalie for the Carolina Hurricanes, who's 40 years old, and believe it or not, he became the #1 star of the game. So it's very rarely that you see that happen, but I'm just saying, in hockey, it can happen. And then it makes you wonder, is having 2 goalies or 3 goalies a good idea?
Yeah, well, how often do you see them get 2 goalies get injured in the same game on the same team? Yeah, it's true. But that is something, yeah, that the Zamboni became the goalie. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was like with the Jets last year when they went through 2 quarterbacks in 2 weeks. When they went through, Sam Darnold got mono, and then Trevor Siemian, broke his ankle.
How about Chad Pennington and Jay Fiedler getting injured in the same game in 2005, and they had to bring Chad Pennington in, who was playing with
a torn rotator cuff. Yeah.
Now in that game,
And you say the Jets aren't cursed.
now would you say if they didn't bring Pennington in, if Fiedler didn't get hurt, do you think Pennington would have had a better chance of coming back that year, or do you think he would have been completely done where it really didn't matter?
If
Jay Fiedler didn't get hurt, where they had to bring Pennington in, do you think that did more damage to Pennington?
Well, if he had a torn rotator cuff, I don't think he would have. I don't think there was anything for. My assessment is he probably already had a torn rotator cuff, and there wasn't, because I remember they weren't really having him throw passes. So I think he probably already had a torn rotator cuff. So no, I don't think he would have been back that year. But what I think if Jay Fiedler didn't get hurt, they would have been more competitive that year because he was a decent backup.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He brought Miami to the playoffs, I remember, in 2000.
Yeah.
And he was a good mobile quarterback who could scramble and make plays. Yeah, too bad the injury got to him, because he would have been a good quarterback to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do when 2 quarterbacks get hurt in the same week?
Same week and same game, and this was what we're talking about years ago, 15 years ago, but yeah, same game,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It happens, I guess.
Now, meanwhile, the other big thing in sports right now is we're just into spring training right now, and Major League Baseball, and now I'll give the latest reports I'm seeing on the Yankees are yet again, unfortunately, starting off spring training with not where you like to be starting off a season injury wise. You got pretty much Luis Severino again, James Paxton. We are already know about James Paxton and Aaron Judge all, experiencing some injuries. So, starting with Luis Severino, he has forearm and elbow soreness. He's had forearm and elbow soreness and has been for the time being shut down and is undergoing some MRIs in New York. So that's something definitely to be concerned about. Hopefully this wasn't as serious as it was last year.
Yeah, that would be bad, especially since most of the people who were injured last year were actually players, but like position players. But yeah, to have starting pitching injured, and the Yankees starting pitching is very valuable, so that is a problem.
Well, we did have Luis Severino.
There's not as much depth.
Well, we did have Luis Severino miss almost all of last year, with the injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then James Paxton, we already know about him. He had a hernia in his back and had surgery that he had surgery on a few weeks ago. But the latest report is they're hopeful he'll be back. He'd say he should be back before the All-Star break and will hopefully be back as early as June. They say so. That's good. That's good news right there.
And it looks like, Miguel Andujar is having a good spring training. So I remember last year there were debates whether they would end up trading him or do you see him staying on the Yankees?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting who they'll make their main regular third baseman, him or Urshela,
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now in addition, we also have Aaron Judge is having is starting the season with right shoulder soreness, and has kept him from batting practice. But the good news is he's gone through several tests and an MRI which found nothing wrong with his shoulder. So and he did participate in some tossing and catching and hit from a tee on Friday. So hopefully he's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's good because he's been injured for extended periods of time. And you don't want him to get that reputation of somebody who's on the disabled list all the time. So,
yeah. And the Yankees experienced enough of this last year. We hopefully aren't going to go through it again this year.
Right. Well, especially with the starting pitching, because the Yankees have, they have more depth as position players, but not so much the starting pitching. So,
right. Well, so far the only starting pitcher because they're starting off the season with James Paxton starting the season on the IL, and then you have now you have Luis Severino looking like he's again going to be questionable where his health is going to be a big question mark to start the season this year.
Well,
again.
What about Tanaka? Doesn't he have a partially tummy season now?
Yeah. Well, that's not a new. He's been dealing with that since 20. Yes, that's true. Tanaka, that's the last one. He has a partially torn UCL, but he's been dealing with that since 2014. But
I thought he had a productive year last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally, especially come the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah.
They stepped it up towards the playoffs.
Yeah, so he's had that since 2014, but the fact that he's been playing with it since then is a concern that sooner or later his elbow may give out on him and he'll have to have the Tommy John surgery. So he's been kind of putting off having that Tommy John surgery, I think, and if sooner or later if the elbow does finally give out on him, that he may have to have the Tommy John surgery. So that is a concern too, that he's been pitching with that injury since 2014.
Yeah, it is. It is. That is, that's a potential issue for him. It's a potential issue for the Yankees, and that's 6 years later. He's been dealing with this, like you said, since 2014.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that could be part of the reason he's had some inconsistency too, at times. But,
Yeah, I think I remember he was most lights out in the start of the 2014 season when before he got that injury was like midway through the 2014 season when he partially tore his UCL, and since then he's still been effective but inconsistent at time. He wasn't quite as dominant as he was,
Right. Well,
when he first
because
came
of
over
that,
in 2014. Yeah.
Sure, he's one of the ones who could really step it up towards the playoffs. He knows when he really has to.
Right.
Kind of thing. So.
Right, yeah, and maybe that's because in the playoffs, when everything's on the line, he throws like pitches that are more taxing on the arm that he wouldn't throw in the regular season, you know.
Right, yeah, he does it over a shorter period of time, so he knows when he has to step it up.
Right, yeah, because there are probably maybe certain pitches that are more taxing on the elbow that he probably can't. He knows he can't get away with throwing for that all season long. You know?
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of how he's been. He's somebody who could step it up when he has to.
Yeah.
That was kind of seemed to me. Yeah, that was how it seemed.
Another topic I would like to talk about is basketball, and the one team who's been the interesting story lately is the Brooklyn Nets, and without Kyrie Irving in the lineup right now, the Nets are proven that they can win without him as a team together. Because, Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie, they've been all playing at their best. And even though the Nets are 3 games under 500, they're the 7th seed, and they prove they can get better down the road.
Well, yeah, they're in a weak conference. But yeah, they're doing all right without Kyrie Irving too.
Right. That's also kind of a concern because there's the concern that he has the reputation of really every team seems to be better off without him. So that's a concern if you're looking ahead to next year when Durant returns from injury and hoping that he's going to put them over the top as far as
when Durant comes back. Yeah, absolutely, the Nets will be a much better team and a much better position. I thought on the other behalf, signing Kyrie Irving was a big mistake because D'Angelo Russell was just as good as a player. I mean, he's a lot younger, and I think the Nets were doing well when they had Russell, and Irving may be good, but yeah, the injuries are what you would be concerned about, but when he's healthy, he is an effective player.
Yeah, he might have been a better. Him and Durant might have been a better combo than Durant and Irving. What do you think?
Oh well, maybe that's what they were kind of discovering with the team chemistry. Because maybe if Durant is in the lineup, then maybe there's some difference in chemistry.
Yeah, because there's just a concern I think about Kyrie Irving about how he's he doesn't seem to be the best player for team chemistry. Like teams seem to do better chemistry-wise without him.
Yeah, this was kind of the case with Stoudemire and Carmelo Anthony also. Chemistry is a big thing. It's like the Knicks have often had stars, but they didn't have stars who could play well together. And, they also had some stars who were past their prime. That was also part of the problem.
Yeah.
But, chemistry is a big thing. I mean, you can't have too many people who want to hog the ball. So, that is a big
right, and I don't know much about Kyrie Irving to say he's a ball hog, but I just know it's been a thing where his team seemed to do better without him,
Well, when I watched him play, there was a game where the Nets are up by a couple points, and it was a minute left where the clock was running off, and what he did, which was maybe a little too unnecessary, he tried to shoot a 3, which led to a turnover where the other team tied the game to force overtime, and then the Nets ended up dodging a bullet, winning in overtime. So, yeah, superstars, I mean, these days tend to be a distraction to a team. I mean, yes, they're good with their talent and what they're able to do, but on the other hand, they're a bit of a distraction at times, depending on who your team is.
Well, it also depends on like the chemistry, how they play together. The Golden State Warriors had like 4 superstars, but they played very well together. So, the 70s Knicks had very good players too, but they played very well together. So, even the 90s Knicks had
Right, well,
very good players.
I don't know if you would call anyone beyond Patrick Ewing really a superstar on that team, but Patrick Ewing was like the only superstar on that team. But that team did as well as they did, probably thanks to chemistry more so than talent, because Patrick Ewing was like the only real superstar.
Yeah, sure, but I mean the rest of the guys were not without talent. I mean Starks and Oakley and Mason, they worked very, very hard. That's for sure. So. And they would bang on the boards. They would do all the little things that they were very well coached. That was part of it. too.
Yeah, with Pat being coached by Pat Riley.
Then Jeff Van Gundy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they did all the little things that you do to win ball games.
Now, would you say it was shocking when Pat Riley left the Knicks to go to Miami?
I mean, he didn't have a reputation of staying on teams forever. I mean, well, he eventually left the Lakers.
He retired. He kind of retired though,
Yeah.
And I think the Knicks sort of managed to draw him out of retirement. That was because he retired. Because he retired and was in broadcasting, I think, for a couple years before he came to the Knicks.
Yeah. I mean, people were pretty angry. How surprising was it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think eventually he was gonna quit. And some of that, really, it was because he couldn't get full control of the team. He wanted to be like GM and coach, which is probably what they ought to have done. They ought to have, if that's what he wanted, because that's what he did in Miami, and he built super teams. He built super teams. So, yeah, the Knicks were kind of boneheaded to not give that to him.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And he's made the Knicks look like boneheads.
Now, if they would have had Riley, do you think they would have maybe won a championship than they did with the chance with Van Gundy?
Yeah, sure. Well, if they made him coach and GM, I think they would have. But I mean, as he couldn't get the players that were much more talented than the players that they had, so that's part of the reason that they never won a championship. Because Pat Riley did the best he could with what he had, but if he had more talented players, yeah, he may have won more championships. Of course, they could have still won championships, but there was this guy in Chicago. What was his name?
Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, of course. Yeah, it was a lot of great teams, didn't win thanks mainly to him. Like most notably the Utah Jazz teams he beat in the finals. Like the Stockton and Malone Jazz teams were probably most notably the teams that were good enough to win a championship, and probably those in the 97 and 98 Jazz teams are probably two of the best teams to not win a championships thanks to Michael Jordan.
I know. Yeah, so, it was a funny era because Jordan was just so damn good that he hogged all the championships.
He did, yeah. He won, I remember 3 in a row from 96, 97, and 98.
And then he won 3 in a row before 91, 92, 93.
Right,
So-
he won. Yeah, he had 2 sets of three-peats, 91, 92, 93, and then 96, 97, 98.
Yeah, so he hogged 6 championships. right when the Knicks really could have won one.
Right, the early '90s was kind of like when the Knicks were kind of could have won one, but didn't thanks to Michael Jordan. And then it was the late '90s was like when the Stockton and Malone Jazz were really like a team that was definitely good enough to win a championship, but frickin' Michael Jordan, wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, I know. That was something. That was really something.
Now, when Michael Jordan played baseball for the Chicago White Sox, that was an advantage for the Knicks playing the Chicago Bulls.
It was, and they were so good that those Bulls teams, they still took them to 7 games.
Right, even without Michael Jordan, the Knicks still just barely managed to get past the Bulls in '94. It still took 7 games for the Knicks to get past the Bulls in '94.
Yeah. No question. Yeah. Those were very good teams. Those were very good teams that the Chicago Bulls had. And what are you gonna do? It's life. That's why the Knicks didn't win the championship. I don't think they were cursed per se. I think they had Michael Jordan to compete against. And
right.
The timing just didn't work out that well. So.
Right, and right now you don't think the Knicks are cursed. You think they're just having ownership, but you do think the Jets are cursed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I think they both just have inept ownership. The Jets, too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they do, but in the Jets case, that's part of the curse. So.
Yeah, the Knicks have also had some bad fortune. In addition to keep in mind they've had some bad fortune too. In addition to inept ownership, like what's a good example? The most recent is last year they kind of were probably doing what was the best move for them, tanking for a high draft pick, but they changed the lottery rules that year such that they still didn't end up with the number 1 pick the way they were hoping to.
Yeah,
but that's okay. Having R.J. Barrett, I think, is okay.
How did the lottery change?
Well, because teams were tanking on purpose. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
So instead of the worst team automatically getting the number 1 pick, they kind of made it a lottery that they draw the 5 worst teams out of a wheel. Yeah.
Right. Well, they've been doing that since 1985, but they've been doing that since 1985. But
back in the days with hockey, when the Devils were the worst team ever in the 80s, back in '84, they were like the worst team. Pittsburgh, the Penguins, they lost games on purposely. And not only if they lost games on purposely, the Devils would have had Mario Lemieux that year. But the fortunes turned out better in the long run for the Devils because they had a goalie in Martin Brodeur, and they won 3 cups more than Mario Lemieux had won with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and 85 is the first year the NBA instated the draft lottery, where the worst team didn't automatically get the first pick, and the Knicks actually benefited from it in '85 because that's how they ended up with Patrick Ewing. Because they were not the worst team in '85, so if it was the worst team automatically got the number 1 pick, then Patrick Ewing actually would have ended up on the Sacramento Kings that year, who were the worst team that year. But the Knicks weren't the worst team, but won the lottery, and that was how they ended up with Patrick Ewing.
So how did it change?
Well, yeah, I think over time they've just made it. It used to be back then. I think the odds were still in your favor that you would end up with the number. They just basically they've changed it so that they've increased the odd, that they've made the odds even longer. That if you're the worst team, that you're going to end up with the number 1 pick. They made it really
equal among the top 5 teams.
Among the bottom. I think
bottom 5 teams.
Yeah, I think they made it like all of the bottom 5 teams like have an equal. likelihood of getting the number one pick, and those odds are only like 14%, so it's like a long shot even if you are the worst team, They used to be better. Your odds used to be a little better if you're the worst team. Now it's really your odds are still a really long shot because it's like equal among the bottom 5 teams.
Yeah. But I don't think R.J. Barrett is actually a bad one.
No, but he's not so far. He's not doing as well as the top 2 picks. So I think if you're a Knicks fan right now, you are thinking, man, it would have been nice to get one of the top 2 picks because the top 2 picks are definitely outperforming him so far. That there is a big difference between R.J. Barrett and the top 2 picks.
That could also be partly because of the team they're on too, as well. I mean, the Knicks are not exactly. The Knicks are, pretty bad as far as supporting staff. So.
Yeah, and look at what you're putting R.J. Barrett through in his rookie year. There's a change in coaching first, and then a change in front office.
Right, I know, exactly. Yeah, it's a pretty dysfunctional organization.
So we would say the Knicks are managed worse than the Jets.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That I would say the Jets are pretty bad. I think the Jets management is pretty bad, but the Knicks even more so.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now people are starting to say, okay, for once they're doing the exact opposite. They're maybe finally waking up and doing the exact opposite of what they used to do. Like right now they're trying to build their draft capital and they're really they've acquired a lot of first round picks in coming years that give them a chance to maybe rebuild, and that's the exact opposite of what they were doing for a long time, which was trading all their first round picks for these over the hill, over the hill and overrated,
Overrated, overpriced stars.
Overpriced stars. That's what they
former
were.
Stars, really.
Former stars, really. That's what they were doing for many years,
Right. Yeah. Indeed. So, we'll see. I mean, will things change? I mean, it's been 20 very long years.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll believe it when we see it,
Right.
And the same way I feel about the Jets, it's like, like I was saying last week, they could have even if they have a competitive season or two, I'm not going to be really thinking, okay, now they're headed in the right direction to being a perennial contender, because I've seen them have a competitive season here and there and then everything fall apart. So
now I'm getting this kind of funny vibe now when you come to the NFL draft. You know how Burrow doesn't. We're discussing that he doesn't want to go to Cincinnati. Do you believe in all the moves, like say the New England Patriots don't want to sign Brady for whatever reason, and they decide to make a move to get Burrow in the draft? Do you think that can possibly happen?
It's possible. Is it probable? Probably not. I think that Robert Kraft wants Tom Brady back. So
yeah.
I think he's going to get Tom Brady back.
And the latest I've heard on Tom Brady is he doesn't even want a ton of money. I think he just wants a 2-year commitment from them. He doesn't want to be under the 1-year lame duck status of, contract status. So I think he wants a 2-year commitment from them and is willing to even take a pay cut so that they can sign, other players to give him a good supporting cast, because that's to Brady's credit. He's definitely one of the rare breed of players who actually cares more about winning than money. A lot of players care most, for them it's more about them. For most players, I'm afraid, unfortunately, it's more about the money than what's best for the team,
No doubt, yeah. And I mean, definitely, I don't begrudge Tom Brady that, in a sense that, definitely it would be nice to see, somebody like the Giants have the success that the New England Patriots have had, but at the same time, give Tom Brady credit, and as he's getting older, for him to stay competitive, he also knows he needs a much more supportive cast, a much better supporting cast. So,
Right.
for him to, and he also knows that the New England Patriots invest in that supporting cast for him. So, for him to go out and make it on top at his age, I think his best bet is to stay with the Patriots. I think that's what's going to happen.
Right.
I would think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Tom Brady is also someone who's really passionate about football, and playing and his job. We might think all professional football players are passionate about football, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. A lot of them might view it as like a job. You go there, you get your paycheck, and then you leave, and you go about your life outside of your job. Like not all of us are really passionate about our jobs, and we may take for granted that may be the case for a lot of professional athletes too. They may not necessarily be passionate about their jobs.
Which is wild when you think about you would think that they would. To work so hard to get that to that point and think of it as just a job.
Right, probably more than not are, because it does take a lot of passion and hard work to get to that level of being a professional athlete. But still, for some, it might be considered like they're there to get a paycheck. Like a lot of them, just like a lot of people in a job, they're there to get a paycheck. They're not necessarily there to, might view it in a job, like people who go to work might be saying, well, I'm going to work to get a paycheck rather than going to work to really, because I'm passionate about what I do,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, this is true. There's no doubt about it. That, they could. It's amazing that you could almost get there to that point and be on sheer talent and just not really care and just be there to get a paycheck. But it is true that some of those guys just might be so talented that, they get there just to
get a paycheck.
Just to get a paycheck.
Right. I'm not necessarily saying I don't think these guys are in the majority, because I think more of them than not need to work really extremely hard to get to where they are. But there might be some in there that get there on sheer talent, and then for them they're just there for the paycheck, to get a paycheck.
Right. Yeah. It's true. Well, and you see a lot of that probably when you think about all the players who hold out for more money and all that jazz.
Yeah,
so,
and I think there is maybe among the it's kind of like that's the thing. I think they know that them getting a bigger paycheck isn't going to benefit the team and thus benefit their chances of winning Super Bowls or winning championships. So therefore, it's a lot of them are in it for themselves. Let's put it that way. They care mostly about their money and their money as opposed to the team winning.
And think about it this way too. That a lot of people, it might be the last paycheck they ever want to make. It's from playing. They might never make any money again. The average career is probably like 4 years, and they might not make any more money after that.
Right. So it's true. And it's like in a sport like football, where it's like you're on where an injury can really where in a game as tough as football, where one bad injury can really make it end your career. It's like your career could be over, at the drop of a hat if you get a bad enough injury that they're feeling like they got to make their money while they can.
Yeah, make it now. Yeah. Well, of course, there's also the thing that in some ways it's actually good. We all ought to have unions that are so strong that they end up with so much money. I'm sure the unions are part of the reason why these players do so well. Because and actually it is true. Before the unions, players really weren't paid that much.
Right, and it's probably largely thanks to the union that the players have a lot of insurance security. Like if they do get injured, they still have to. Those teams still have to pay them.
Right.
Yeah.
No question.
They have a lot of salary that's guaranteed even if they get injured.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. Exactly. So, if only we could get organized labor that strong for all fields. In many ways we'd be much better off, I think. At least the working classes and stuff for sure. But, it is kind of wild that in baseball, in sports that, yes, some of them are in it primarily for the money, but also, I mean, like you said, it's kind of understandable, though, because they got to make the money where they can to some degree.
But still, I have the reaction, how much money do they need to make? Because they're already, players, a lot of these players are already like making $10 million. Do they really need to hold out so that they're getting $15 million a year?
More money than we'll ever see, sure.
Instead of $10 million a year, do they really need to hold out for like $15 million versus $10 million? When you're already getting $10 million, how much more do you really need to be worried about? How much more money you're going to get?
That's true, yeah, but also, I mean, the billionaire owners even make more profits, so a lot of them are kind of arguing just to share in the profits too. So
yeah, that makes sense actually, because the owners' net worth are usually in the billions of dollars. Right. So it's like the $10-15 million that the players are making
it's really peanuts.
Is like a peanuts compared to what the owner's net worth is.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's also kind of what is. I mean, really, this is true, really, for a lot of companies. That's why if there was stronger organized labor movement, that would would help. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
still, I don't.
That's aside from the sports talk show. But,
still, I tend not to feel, and I'll say I still tend not to feel too sorry for someone who's when I'm making like $13-15 an hour at my job, I don't feel too sorry for somebody who's making $10 million a year at their job.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that too. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, but that's just why, we really need a revolution and a systems change in this, country. But that's on another topic besides.
Yeah, that's political.
Yeah.
That's if we're a political talk show. That's where there's some place where the sports and politics can blend, but this is more sports than but more we'd go a little bit deeper into the politics that would be not necessarily relevant to that sports right now.
Right, but on that note, it's been probably about an hour. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up. Thank you to Rockland World Radio, Modern Metro, Niagara Village Theater, and of course the Shopping on the Knucklehead. We're gonna go have dinner now. We got the burger special, and Goose Island Bourbon Barrel Stout is very good.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers, Ithaca Flower Power, brewed from my hometown of Ithaca, New York.
And may your teams win.
Yeah, exactly. 90 craft beers on tap. You can't beat it. So, best in New Jersey. Yeah. Combinations. But signing off.
Thank you.
Till next week.
It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.